Welcome to Colombia. Today we have a very special topic, very interesting. We're talking about security and the history of security in Colombia. Since 2011, Colombia doubled the incoming foreign tourists coming to Colombia. And therefore it's a very important topic to discuss, to inform everybody all over the world what's the situation as of today, because the history of Colombia, which is broadly known, is very different to the situation we are in today. I therefore organized a discussion, a panel, and invited some guests. I will introduce you Professor Hernando Zuleta. He's the director of the Center of Development at the University Los Andes in the economic department. On my right side, I have the Captain Farigua. He's the head of Bogota for the tourist police in Colombia.
So, Colombia, like many other Latin American countries, has a long history of violent conflicts since the discovery. But in the last century was a big war called the 1,000 Days War. Then Colombia was a very poor country and political conflicts were extreme. The next big wave of violence was in the 50s, the so-called La Violencia, the violence. And this type of violence was between the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party. The end of the conflict was Frente Nacional, like an agreement between the two parties. And some people claimed that this was an elite agreement. So the soldiers of the two armies were abandoned. And some people claimed that this was like the beginning of the guerrilla movements that appeared several years after that. So until then, violence was basically liberals and conservatives. In the late 60s, in the middle of Frente Nacional, communist guerrillas appeared. First, they were like not very articulated, but then the influence of Cuba and the communist movement reshaped these guerrilla movements, and in principle they were basically located in rural areas. However, in the 70s maybe there was like a new movement, more urban. M19 was composed by former students of universities. The destructive power of these guerrilla movements was not very big. It was locally big in some places of Colombia, but in general it was not very big. They didn't have the power to challenge the establishment. In the 70s, 73 in particular, there was a big change in the international market of cocaine. Until 1973, the center of cocaine distribution was Chile, but Pinochet just expulsed all the drug dealers from Chile, and Colombia became the center of production and distribution. The fields of coca were located in Peru and Bolivia. Colombia didn't have coca fields. The fact that Colombia was the center of the cocaine production and distribution reshaped the economic system of Colombia. The money of cocaine corrupted politics, all the institutions basically. In the middle of the 80s, a political group was completely against this coalition between drug dealers and politicians, and they were basically prosecuting politicians with links to these drug dealing markets, And they were also prosecuting drug dealers. This conflict led to basically the most violent years in the history of Colombia. The war between Cartel de Medellin and the establishment. The police, the president, all were prosecuting the members of Cartel de Medellin, and the response was violent attacks against malls, against policemen and policewomen. The end of this extremely violent wave had to do with negotiations between the government and the drug lords, plus the new constitution. So that the hardest moment was the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. There was a new way of doing politics, the new constitution, and in this new constitution, extradition was forbidden. So these facts calmed down the drug lords. There was also a new system, judicial system, so drug lords could collaborate with the justice and had received better conditions, etc. However, Cartel de Medellin didn't take these commitments seriously. And everybody knows about La Catedral. He escaped, but after that we had like a stronger army, a stronger police department, and basically the Colombian state won this war against Cartel de Medellin. Then Cartel de Cali was alive. They had another way of doing things. They tried to permeate the politics without violence. This didn't work out because there was a big scandal, because there was money of Cartel de Medellin in the political Cartel de Cali, sorry, in the political campaign. So basically, the government was really hard on Cartel de Cali, and it ended up with the Cartel de Cali going to prison. This was good news. However, in Peru, Fujimori made an agreement with the government of the United States that the movements of coca from Peru to Colombia happen in general in airplanes, but with the new technology from the United States, this was over. So we didn't have these big lords organizing cocaine markets, and we didn't have this aerial bridge between Peru and Colombia. So we start having coca crops here in Colombia. And this was the birth, if you ask me, of a new wave of violence. Because as coca cultivation was growing, FARC on one side was controlling the market of coca in Colombia, and on the other side, paramilitaries. So this expansion of coca cultivation came with violence, and it was a very profitable business. So both FARC and paramilitaries were getting richer and richer, and with money you have weapons, organization, etc. If you ask me, in these cities we didn't feel the violence that much, but we were all aware of the fact that violence was all around the country. Álvaro Uribe was elected, and his main goal was to destroy FARC. And he was very good doing that. During the last years of Pastrana, the previous president, the army received lots of funds, weapons, organization. So Uribe had a very good army, lots of technology, and the will to go against FARC. So during the years of Uribe, you have this decrease in the numbers of violence. Then with President Santos and the negotiations with FARC, there was a new impulse to decrease violence. And what we have now is a much less violent country than then. Now there are several rural areas which are free of violence today, that we can visit freely. In terms of assassinations, which is basically the most striking index, what we know is that now roughly half of the assassinations we have, they come from fights. People get drunk and kill each other. Yeah, that's stupid and that's a big problem, but it's not organized crime, the main source of assassinations. So today, any number that you see is much better now. And this is one of the reasons why we are receiving lots of tourists. All the areas which were controlled by FARC before, not all of them, but almost all of them are free now. So you can visit almost any place in Colombia.
So, summarizing all this, we can say until the 1950s, Colombia was like a regular Latin American country with average crime rate and violence. And then with the formation of the leftish combatant group, or which is formerly known as the FARC, violence raised, and then with also including paramilitaries and all the drug production and drug trafficking, the crime rate and violence reached its peak in '89, violence and crime rate. The actual turning point we had in 2004 with the election of Alvaro Uribe, the president, where we really saw a decreasing violence and crime rate.
Yeah.
I think we can show you some numbers. I think the interesting statistics are always homicides, which we use to compare worldwide. I'm sure we can show you some statistics on that, the chart. And then we see the curve with the peak, the increase and the decrease. So the situation as of today in terms of crime rate and violence, where are we standing today in a worldwide context?
As our professor was explaining, Colombia until few years ago, it was an adventure and a risk to foreigners and travelers. But I think that now it's so safe, and we have post-conflict that put an end of 50 years of conflict. And today it's a country that shows itself with a friendly face, and our regions, they are doing in each region, they are improving the security in the numbers of foreigners that are coming to Colombia. They are increasing with the pass of the time, and this is an example that we are in a good times. For example, the Forbes magazine published that we are on the forefront of 10 of the coolest destinations to visit in Colombia. The National Police, they are doing hard work to improve the security in each region, to guarantee the security of the foreigners, travelers, and citizens. Our capital is one of the destinations that are recommended by magazines and some articles around the world, and for that reason, we are in a good times in the field of tourism.
This leads to a question. Still, Colombia has a crime rate, there is violence. So the question is, the statistics say Colombia is still not the safest place in the world, but how do foreign tourists get in touch with that? Or do they don't get in touch with that at all? Because it happens somewhere in special areas.
As you know, around the world, we have crimes, we have statistics about homicides. They are down just now, and it is because our national police is doing a hard work in that kind of places where the foreigners are visiting or traveling, where they destinations where foreigners and citizens they didn't have connections before, because we can't go a few years ago. The National Police is working with the Minister of Commerce, Industry and Tourism to counteract that kind of crimes in the main places where the foreigners wants to go.
Well, if we take Bogota, we have the city center or we have La Candelaria, which is the historic part of the city center, and we have all the area that goes up north, where tourists move around. And as I understand you, the crime rates in those regions or in those areas are quite low because of the presence of the local police force.
Bogota, for example, Bogota, we are in 20 localities or 20 districts where the national police guarantee the security in that areas, not just in the downtown.
The police department is incorporating technology consistently for the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years. So now, in Bogota, for instance, they have cameras. And cameras are extremely useful for two reasons. First, to identify criminals, but second, to deter. Second, they have this, they developed a system of, we call them hotspots. So they identified all the places, all the streets, segments of streets where the biggest part of crimes happen. So the police send people with regular basis to these places, and the effect was very, very important. Plus, there's also now an app you can use when you're the victim of a crime, so you don't need to go to a police station.
Can we give some examples for foreigners coming to Colombia and they face a crime? What are the usual crimes that happen? What are the mistakes of the foreigners? Because usually you can prevent a lot, which many people don't do. And what would be the suggestion of the police for foreigners to prevent better in the future?
We recommend to take a map with the main places that you want to go, and to ask to someone else or on the hotel about the security in that place, where you can go. For example, if you want to go to Monserrate, you have to wait just by you have to take the way just to walk around the Monserrate, but you don't have to go by other place, because it could be unsafe. To keep your documents, a copy of your documents. In Colombia, it's not necessary to have your original identification. If you are approached by someone else who asks for some documents or some belongings, you don't have to provide or give that money or jewelries, because in Colombia you have to has working with the uniform to ask to someone else, to foreigners and citizens, about your belongings or personal identification, and to take the transportation that is regulating by platforms like Easy Taxi, and for that reason don't take taxis around on the street or wherever you want, and to take a taxi for a call or with a platform. And if you are going to take a taxi, to take a note of the plate of the car, and to send the message or to someone else, to a friend or someone of your family.
And the crimes that happen most to foreign tourists, I guess, you have to correct me, I guess it's pickpocketing and robbery. And
yeah.
Is there other stuff?
People take advantage about foreigners and travelers around the world, and people lose of sight your belongings, and for that reason they steal or store their belongings, and you have to be aware of your personal things or belongings, because it's something that happens not just in Colombia, it happens around the world, as I said. But they are our principal crimes against our tourists. We don't have statistics in Bogota, principal with foreigners about homicides. We don't present that kind of incidents or issues, and I think that foreigners could be very safe in not just in Bogota, in our capital, around our whole city or whole country.
That's good talking about the whole country and not just about Bogota, because usually my clients, they come to Bogota, but they travel all around Colombia. And they go to the Coffee Triangle, they go to Medellin, Cartagena, Santa Marta, and those places are all very safe. But if you Colombia is very big. It has almost the size, or it's bigger actually than Germany and France together. Or for our US viewers, it's like California and Texas together. So it's a huge country. And what would you say, is it safe for tourists to move around the whole department, or you need to take some precautions if you want to go there?
I think that you can go, or foreigners can go to all the departments of our destinations or tourist destinations. We don't have any warnings, travel warnings, or close people for our recommendations, and the National Police recommend to visit all our tourist destinations. We are working with the Army too, and they prevent that kind of crimes in regions or apart areas where we can go. It's so important to show our country abroad with a friendly face, with the security, because we think that if you guarantee the security, is something that you can recommend our destination, and for that reason our governments, they are worry about the security. For that reason, we are doing a hard work to improve the security in that places, not just in tourist destinations, but in the whole country.
I would like to give some advice. What I usually give clients that come to Colombia, I give them advice, I give them a list how to behave when coming to Colombia and what to be careful. So I will give my advice, and maybe all of us can give advice to them. So what we know from experience. Don't bring your jewelry. Don't wear your big Rolex, expensive necklace, because some people don't have much money, and there is a crime rate. It might happen if you show that you're rich and you have something. It will attract, obviously, people with a certain intention, like it happens all over the world in big cities and countries with higher crime rates. Nightlife is a very special topic. Colombia is great for going out, but also there are certain risks. If you go out and you're approached by people,
You don't know.
Don't trust right away in everybody. And what also happens, it happens in Switzerland also, that people drug other people's and put drugs in their drinks. And then you lose your memory and you don't know what happens. This is also a risk. So be careful when you go out and make sure your drinks are safe and you're not drugged. When you travel around the country, especially when you're a backpacker and you don't know the area, don't wander into the woods. Not that right away something happens, but you never know, if you're not familiar with the region, what's going on there. So don't just do something by your own. Always be careful in the regions where you go and how you go there and with whom. So what do we recommend in case of a crime? If somebody robs them?
The first thing is to stay calm. Is the principal thing, and don't try to force with them or to stop them. The best is to give that they want to take. Don't resist to them, and don't try to run away, because you can be hard on the back, and don't make too much movements during the act, and when the issue happens, the first thing that you have to to think, is to call to someone else.
So they can either call the number 123.
They can fill on the platform denuncia, where the crimes happen or where someone stole your package. It's just to fill on the platform denuncia. But if you don't have internet, you can approach to some police officer and to ask where you can go to put the to establish that kind of crimes.
And is it only in Spanish or also in English?
It's in Spanish just now because it's a new platform that that we are providing to citizens, and we are improving with that kind of platform. And I think that in few days we can have the in English language.
If you're not Spanish speaking, approach a police officer, and then you will lead to the next police station where you can file the crime and explain what happened to you.
But we hope that not that kind of issues happen, but probably could be happening because around the world happens that kind of things.
I would like to thank the University of Los Andes hosting us with the security panel, especially Professor Zuleta for participating, and also the support of Policía Nacional with Captain Farigua. I think it's very important to have such discussions and also to publish it and show everybody where are we standing today in Colombia.
To the different foreigners in the worldwide, we recommend to visit each region in our country because we have different destinations, and you have just one risk. The risk is that you want to stay here forever. It's just that risk, and we recommend to keep in touch with your national police because we guarantee the security in all our country, in all the cities, all regions, all districts, and we are a friend of everybody.
Thank you for the invitation. I also invite everyone to come here. If you come to Colombia, you will dance a lot, you will laugh a lot, and you will be happy at least for some weeks. You may get in love, and you, as the captain was saying, the biggest risk is wanting to stay here for the whole life.
Yeah, as you can see, it happened to me.